Good evening and welcome to the Sinister Wisdom reading celebrating the launch of Sinister Wisdom 120, Asian Lesbians. First, thank you to Carol Kramer and Your Girlfriend for the opening song, Peace and Harmony. More information about the music is in the chat. My name is Julie Enzer and I'm pleased to welcome you to this evening's reading. As we begin this evening, I want to honor two things. First, as you all probably know, we are just a few hours from the verdict in the trial in Minneapolis. And I know many of us are feeling relief as we see justice for George Floyd. And so I want to acknowledge that and thank you for joining us this evening at this, what I'm sure is for many people, an incredibly emotional time on a series of difficult events in our country over the past months and over the past year. I also want to acknowledge before we begin that we are all zooming in and situated in different places and on land that is historically not ours. So I hope we can all take a moment to acknowledge the land that we are on and the indigenous peoples who continue to live here and who lived here previously before we occupied this land as a colonial power. We're going to go through a chakra block and really wonderful hour as we launch Sinister Wisdom 120. We'll be wrapping up right around 8 o'clock, as you all know we do, including time for our traditional dance number at the end. If you're not familiar with Sinister Wisdom, I want to invite you briefly to become a subscriber. Sinister Wisdom is a quarterly journal of lesbian literature and art. It is maintained by all volunteers, writers, readers, editors, contributors, and it is just a thrill and an honor to work on it every day. A group of monthly sustainers are vital to our work. If you're able to give $3, $5, or maybe $10 or $15 a month to support Sinister Wisdom, you can sign up as a sustainer at sinisterwisdom.org/sustainers. I send out emails every month to our sustainers when their gift comes in with behind the scene details and new information about what we have coming in the journal. As always, I appreciate everyone who's joining us this evening and the many lesbians that lift up and support the work of Sinister Wisdom. Thank you. So I'm going to do a few housekeeping notes before I turn the program over to our board member, Shramona Mendel, who will MC and guide us through the readings this evening. First, I can hear some of your microphones, and I know some of you are not muted. Please mute yourself at this point. If we detect noise from you, we will mute you ourselves. There will be opportunities to put information in the chat, to wave at people, to cheer at the end of our program this evening. But as we move through, please do mute your microphones. If you want to show appreciation for the readers, I encourage you to wave your hands at the end of each reading and use the reaction emojis on Zoom, which you can check out right now. Also, as I've mentioned, feel free to put information in the chat to share your reactions with the readers. We download all of that and share it after the event. If you need technical assistance this evening, chat with me, Juno Stilley, or Casey Moore. We are all on tap to help you with any technology questions. We are recording the event this evening. You all should see, I'm double checking, you should see the red flashing dot telling you that we are recording it. And we will make this recording available starting tomorrow or Thursday at sinisterwisdom.org/SW120. Finally, the gorgeous issue is in the mail to all subscribers. As many of you know, we are struggling with USPS, one of our beloved national institutions, but it is wending its way to everyone, and some readers will be reading from it and holding it up for you. With COVID in the former administration, we have many challenges with the United States Postal Service. But if your copy has not arrived, it should be arriving soon. If you do not have it by May 14th, send me an email. I'll get you out a replacement copy. Also, if you received this issue and you've not received Sinister Wisdom 119, email or send me a letter. We're sending replacement copies for that. But I am pleased to report most people are now seeing 119, some people receiving 119 and 120 within days of one another. Finally, before I turn the program over, I just want to extend a really special thanks to Vi Khi Nao, who's the editor of this issue. It was Tara Shea Burke, another Sinister Wisdom board member, who said, oh, you should reach out to Vi and see if she wants to do an issue on the theme Asian lesbians. And Vi was game, worked so hard through the whole process, and was just a pleasure and a delight every step of the way. Many people were helpful to Vi, and I thank all of them too. And I'm just so tickled and proud of where we ended up with this issue. So thank you, Vi. Thank you, Amy, who also helped extraordinarily and has become a really important support for the journal, and to everyone who contributed work. So now we'll go on to our program. And my last responsibility here this evening, other than sitting with joy as we all listen to these phenomenal readers, is to introduce Shramona Mundal as the MC for the evening. Shramona came to Sinister Wisdom as a student intern at New York University. And I'll be honest, it was love at first sight. Shramona worked on a number of projects to make the journal better, and they became editor of the forthcoming Tribute to Conditions issue with Cheryl Clark and me. Then they agreed to join the Sinister Wisdom Board of Directors. And in a few weeks, Shramona will be graduating from college and heading to graduate school, but we hope to keep them close to Sinister Wisdom for a very long time. Please join me now in welcoming Shramona.
Hi everyone, welcome to our event tonight. I am thrilled to join you this evening as we celebrate this wonderful new issue of Sinister Wisdom, edited by Vi Khi Nao, who I will be talking with a little later in the program. And to begin, we are going to have some readings from the journal, and I'm really excited for them. Our first reader holds an MFA in creative writing from CSU Long Beach. They currently teach critical thinking, literature, and composition at Golden West College, Irvine Valley College, and Cypress College. They edit poetry and fiction for the Offing magazine and Indicia Lit. They were the semifinalist for Goldwake Press's Poetry Contest in 2018. Their words have been featured in Berkeley Poetry Review, Hobart Literary Magazine, Apogee Journal, and Queen Mob's Tea House. They tweet at JaxNTP. Please join me in welcoming JaxNTP.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm going to go ahead and read two of the three poems published in the journal. The first one, Dear women who are not embarrassed when their nipples get hard in public, did you know that deserts are the first place to thirst because they were the ancient oceans that dried first? Evolution of consciousness, totems for a sea witch, nautilus, squid, cuttlefish, octopus, locomotion defense. I haven't been able to process joy since I've inherited my mother's trauma while she was pregnant with me. It is easier to thread the needle if you lick it first. Mother taught me feminine etiquette at a young age I had to let go. Erect, motion, and bait, a simple love story in 3 parts. Cut the deck and draw the strength. Trilobite transformation. Gong kum duk yêu dang ba. Tell me all about the things we cannot undo. Threats are promises people want to keep. At some point, you cannot live in rage. Stop fighting to allow yourself a chance to heal. Go on, draw the 3 of Cups. The second poem, let's make a list of women in power now. The trees are so still, they are about to catch on fire. We wake up for something to do, someone to become. The difference between Arya and Warble, invisible red, an expression of empathy is to classify pain. What does it mean if top 5 is the only 5? The unexpected happiness when the registered nurse asks us to rate our physical level of pain. On a scale from familiar to alien, what we know when top 5 is the only 5, as in not us, a circular stiffness, limbs asleep. What happens to a poem of resistance left unread? Classification as erasure, as cage caught, the expected happiness of our next shift nurse, the opportunity to offer self again, weigh in flux, tinted hyacinth, tainted feminine, soiled not phallic, how to file the unknown, how to file, how to unknow. Thank you.
Thank you, Jax. Our next reader's fiction has appeared in the Cincinnati Review, Foglifter, Joyland, and elsewhere. She lives in upstate New York, where she is an assistant professor of English at Hartwick College. Her debut story collection, The Runaway Restaurant, is forthcoming from 713 Books in 2022. Find more of her work online at www.tessayang.com or follow her on Twitter at the Tessadactyl. Please join me in welcoming Tessa Yang.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Shramona and Julie and everybody else for making tonight possible. I'm going to be reading a short piece of fiction that appears in the issue. I was inspired by an article I read a few years back about what can happen to Facebook accounts after the users pass away. I found that concept to be kind of haunting and intriguing, the little internet bits of us that are left after we're gone. So as is usually the case with things that intrigue me, I decided to write a story about it. It's called #In Memoriam. In Lila's last profile picture, she crouches on the sidewalk in paint-spattered jeans, one foot raised above a graffitied fire hydrant, lips drawn back in what is either cheesy grin or snarl. Lila's last cover photo, a still from an obscure French film. Half-naked women in a bathhouse drape themselves over lounge chairs like so many towels wilted from heat. Lila's last Facebook status bemoans the ills of Facebook, though she monitored her likes obsessively and combed her newsfeed for gossipy tidbits 8 times a day. The last person she friended was named Philip Baker Horowitz, a soccer player with a receding hairline and an acne-pocked forehead. He did not, as far as I know, attend the funeral. The last photo Lila posted was of her dinner Tuesday night, sushi, which she ordered and ate in obscene quantities, even in our landlocked college town, 900 miles from the nearest ocean, where all seafood was suspect. The last photo she was tagged in came from the improv team's page. Lila Park leads a team of eager first years in an icebreaker activity at orientation. The first years don't look so eager, but Lila does. The last timeline Lila posted on was mine, though I wouldn't see it till 6 days after the funeral, when I returned to Facebook feeling raw, dried out, some dehydrated fruit version of me. There were messages from dozens of relatives and friends who were thinking about me, praying for me, now that Lila was gone. She didn't include a relationship status on her profile, but everyone knew what we were to each other. I'm an anomaly for my generation, a technophobe among legions of savvy millennials with punny Twitter handles and carefully calibrated Instagram aesthetics. I can go weeks without checking my Facebook. My profile picture remains that generic person-shaped cutout on a light blue background. Lila used to make fun of me for this. What she posted on my timeline was a BuzzFeed article about 2 Asian grannies recently arrested outside Memphis for a shoplifting spree. $12,000 worth of tech gadgets, jewelry, and rare Lego sets lifted from various malls and stored in their garage over a period of 15 months. It was the perfect con. Who would suspect two cheery old crones pushing covered strollers where surely grandchildren lay sleeping? Who would notice them at all? In their mugshots, one woman bears a set of gleaming dentures, the other grimaces, unimpressed, a huge sty on her left eyelid like a fleshy pom-pom. What are your retirement plans? Lila posted beneath the article. #goals. Thank you.
Thank you, Tessa. Our next reader is an Indian queer artist, educator, and consultant based in Brooklyn. She received her BA in Biochemistry and Women's Studies and Asian Studies from Vassar College and her MA in Special Education from Relay Graduate School of Education. Her work explores the complex, multiplicitous generational histories of diasporic queers and projects forward to a future or present of joy, desire, and curiosity. Check out her work at shivanidave.com. Please join me in welcoming Shivani Dave.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm going to be reading two poems. One is in the collection, and one is a more recent poem that you can find at godjalmagazine.com. First one is called My Name Means Goddess. My hips learned to speak in Kathak classes, praising goddesses who were set on fire but never burned. My two small kid lips painted red hot before I could master the grace of lipstick. Hands balanced, scenes of Narayan's triumph, thighs thundered in rhythm with Krishna chasing Leela. Body swayed in motion with Rama freeing Sita. I rehearsed resilience. But not all conquest is choreographed. Ripped at the seams, my hips bucked against your pleats just for a second. 1, 2. Sometimes recognition is obscured by 3, promises of love. Maybe that's why 4, I am still counting. 4, every time I am on my knees, I feel your grip force yourself between my hips. 5. I find femme rage burning in the Hindu myths memorized by my fingertips. 1, in Kali, who collects the heads she severs around her neck. 2, in Parvati, who split herself into 10, 1 to answer every doubt of her strength. 3, in Durga, whose impenetrable fortress knows nothing of fear. 4, I find Shakti in Shivani, in telling the stories of my hips, and I've prayed to myself every night since. Thank you. The next one is called Mudra, and it's part of a larger project I'm working on, that I'm really excited about, pairing collage and text. So if you check out the website, you'll also be able to see the collage. Prithvi. My hands don't work before cha is why she never did my hair before school is why I never did my hair before school is why it looks better when you straighten it. Scissor to eyebrow, razor to leg, needle to skin, pass. Gel. Play with my hair, please. Follow the strands from root to tip, repeat endlessly, flow like water. I can't wait to feel this way for years. Agni. Familial fractals ricocheting fire between forefinger and thumb. I used to coddle that back of throat lump I now know is rage. Now I bathe by candlelight to avoid exhausting my own flame. Vayu. While irreverent expectation, green, wanes to crispy exterior brown, swollen, trembling, simple fruit whisper, slice from neck to nagi, pour out this body. Akash. Girl, it's not that bad, cut the shit. LMAO, I know, but sometimes I'm just like, what is the fucking point? Nothing is what they said it would be. What do I do with that? You don't do anything. Photosynthesize. Swing from sun to sun. Expand. Meet the rays. Thank you.
Thank you, Shivani. I'd now like to welcome our issue editor, Vi Khi Nao. Vi Khi Nao is the author of 4 poetry collections, Human Tetris, Sheep Machine, Umbilical Hospital, The Old Philosopher, and of the short stories collection, A Brief Alphabet of Torture, and of the novel Fish in Exile. Her poetry collection, A Bell Curve is a Pregnant Straight Line, and her short stories collection, The Vegas Dilemma, are forthcoming from 1111 Press this summer and fall 2021, respectively. Her work includes poetry, fiction, film, and cross-genre collaboration. She was the fall 2019 fellow at the Black Mountain Institute. Vi, would you like to start us off by reading to us for a bit?
And yes, I would love to. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you, Julie, for having us, and Tara for introducing me to Edit. And thank you. I'm going to read the introduction, just the first paragraph, just to give you some sense of the collection, if you don't have a copy of your own at this moment. I was in my late 20s when I first saw Deepa Mehta's Fire. It was the first Asian lesbian film I felt that wasn't designed for and cater to the male Western penis. I grew up in Long Can, Vietnam, near a forest of rubber trees and coffee beans. Earth so red it could dye my young legs into red envelopes worthy of handing out during death. And a flea-infused tropical climate that forced us to have practical relationship with mosquito nets. During the tender sapphic lovemaking scene between the two leads, Sita and Radha, Deepa Mehta has naturally endorsed that such intimacy be choreographed in the unelevated atmosphere of a mosquito-netted bedchamber. The scene struck a powerful chord in my Asian carnal consciousness, in part because I grew up in Vietnam, whose rurality was so romantic I had no choice but to love that which is simple and sensible. The sapphic tenderness between Sita and Radha changed the primary landscape of my desire and continued to impact me in my literary work. Most of the sapphic lovemaking scene I've seen in cinema, in art, and in literature have very little to do with mosquito nets. Instead, they take place on sofas, kitchen tables, carpeted floors. None such household furniture ever spoke directly to my Asian desire. They speak the general language of desire, but as most of you know, generality leads to more generality, and desire doesn't operate well under a one-size-fits-all regime. There is erotic isolation that an Asian queer individual endures when the encapsulation of desire has been exported or transplanted elsewhere and has been fitted for mass consumption. And I hope this collection is an antipode of that mass consumption. I also want to randomly pick another poet to so you can see the sample of her work, and it's Cena Rowe, who's not reading. And Cena Rowe is a student and writer from Vancouver, Canada. Formerly published at 14, she had never strayed far from her love of writing, winning both international and national awards and scholarships for her poetry and critical essays. And so she holds her position as the founder and president of the Writers' Art, a collective that holds free poetry programs at senior homes and recreation centers to engage the community through writing. I'm going to read 2 poems by her, and it's called Nightstand. The humming of the refrigerator hollows out the space between the last of your words that have been absorbed by the bedroom, unkindly preserved between a mirror and electric currents. You are a creature paled and washed down by the dense velvet of rain clouds and small traumas. Your last guess is lemon rind, bitter and fragrant, a thing you cannot stomach unless she is diluted with sugar and butter. You pause before closing the door, familiarizing yourself with the equal poise of your own presence again, and conclude that letting others leave with your loneliness in their purse is theft. A siren wails in the distant streets of the city. She would wonder whether it is rushing to or from disaster, but you mourn all the same. The second poem is called Adultery 1. At dusk, untuck me from your cellar and core me with the unripe fruit in your sink. My skin is maroon wax, like chrysanthemum petals unfurling rhythmically from the space between your copper thumb and the knife. Half of me is in your hand. Seedless gut explodes. As you tell her there are leftovers in the fridge for tomorrow. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Vi. It is really wonderful hearing you read and seeing this full issue come together. This issue is how I first met Sinister Wisdom, so it means a lot to me. Can you tell me a little bit about your experience editing this issue of Sinister Wisdom?
It has been quite a pleasure editing this issue, actually. I was amazed at the variety, depth of the queer Asian talent out there. I thought I was very alone in my Asian queerness, or at least I felt like I was the only one existing. So when submissions come in batches, I was very excited to absorb and read and see an array of material that addresses not just, like queer love, but just the struggles or passions or creativities of the queer Asian community. And that diversity excites me greatly, and to see all of it coming into one vessel such as this was a delight. So I did not struggle very much with the editing process. Everyone responded with great generosity. Those who submitted responded with such generosity of creativity, and they were so generous with the material, and it's a very rich collection. I feel honored to be a part of it. I'm grateful that I was asked by Julie and Tara too, and it has opened so many doors for me. Like now that I know that you are out there and existing, it makes me feel at home with you and your Asianness and your queerness. I hope that answers part of the question.
That does. Thank you so much. And one of the highlights of the journal is also community-centered, was the dialogues that you have with some contributors. Tell me a bit about the genesis of that.
Well, earlier on, I think the first calling for the issue, we didn't have the proper, well, we had the proper venue, but we didn't know the most speediest way to engage with the community at large to get their submissions in. And so in a state of pure irrational panic, I just started asking the earliest submitters to read their material and asked if I could interview them. But then as time accumulates more material and more submissions in such large quantities, I had to pull back in my interviews in the conversations I had with some of the earlier correspondents. And so if you were not interviewed for the issue, it's not a reflection of my lack of interest or my lack of desire or that I had favorites. It just so happened that the way in which things unravel allowed that to manifest. And so if I interview everyone, I think the issue would have been like 600, 700 pages. And I don't want to dull you to death as much as everyone provides such incredible material. I also think it should be at a size that that is consumable for the time being, and leave other opportunities for future Asian lesbian materials, so that possibility is out there.
Thank you, Vi. I have one last question for you. What was the greatest joy for you in editing this issue for Sinister Wisdom?
Well, I don't remember what I thought a few days or a week ago, so I'm going to try to remember what in this moment for me. And I think it's getting to know everyone's work, reading everyone's work and reading it with great depth of interest. And I just think that everyone that I've engaged with were very intelligent, especially those that I've interviewed. They're so smart, and I felt like I've learned more from the interview process about my own work, my own Asianness, about growing up. It gives me if sometimes the Asian queerness exists in vacuum, and it's nice to have like a soundboard, and I think the interview process gave me a lot of soundboards in which I could hear the acoustics nature of the Asian lesbian community vibrating on a large scales. And I think that brought me a lot of not just sonic pleasure, but like other aesthetic pleasure as well. And so, yeah, I'm grateful for that. I'm excited about that the most, I believe.
Thank you so much for speaking with me and your work, Vi. I'll pause
Thank
here.
You so much.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
You.
I'll pause here with a brief announcement. If you can see the screen, we're advertising. We hope that you will all join us next week for our discussion with filmmaker Jennifer Abid about her newest film, Nice Chinese Girls Don't, profiling writer Kitty Sway. We will gather at 7 p.m. A special screening of the film is available exclusively to the Sinister Wisdom community starting today, and more information will be in the chat and is already on the email that went out to the Sinister Wisdom community. Sinister Wisdom is only able to do this work because of the labor of volunteers. Volunteers like our next reader, who is a volunteer and associate editor of this issue. Amy Hae-jung lives in New York and works as a freelance copy editor and proofreader. She is a 2021 Quelly Emerging Writer Fellow and recipient of the PEN Robert J. Dow Short Story Prize for Emerging Writers. Please join me in welcoming Amy.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's been a total honor to work on this issue. I'll be reading from a short story called Maria that was published online in Waxwing magazine, and the link should be in the chat. The next day, the news headlines were all about the moon, theories about its disappearance, scientific fumbling, and weird conspiracies and wild speculation. Some people said the moon was tired of looking at us for so many millennia, unable to turn away, tidally locked in a stare to the death, and had finally freed itself. Some said the United States and North Korea had accidentally disintegrated it in competing nuclear explosions. Others said aliens. There was live coverage, breaking news headlines, constant updates for a week and a half, until it became clear that the moon was indeed gone, not merely hidden by some elusive celestial mechanism, and that it wasn't likely to come back anytime soon or by any human means. Then came the long-form essays and thought pieces, hot takes, and even eulogies with titles like, "What does the moon mean to us now that it's gone?" and "In Memoriam, the illustrated life of the moon." Then the news cycle moved on and nobody talked about the moon anymore, seemed to forget it had ever hung pearly in our sky, a shiny earring, blank and bright. Long before the moon's disappearance, Em and I started a Sailor Moon Club. At first it was just the two of us, and we aggressively protected our monogamy, communing only through ear whispers and denying membership to dozens of cheerful classmates. They didn't even know what Sailor Moon was, just resented, with the transparency of childhood, the phonic finality of the word no. But our homeroom teacher told us we were leaving people out and sent us to the guidance counselor for peer mediation. Finally, we agreed to open our club to the public, but the next week we were back in peer mediation. I'd been watching WWE with my brother, and we turned the club into an ultimate sailor fight to the death, making all the white girls fight each other for the titles of Sailor Mercury, Venus, Mars, and Jupiter. Em and I became friends because we were the only two Asians in our grade. I don't remember much of my playground life before our convergence, just that I spent every recess circling a sliding pole alone, tethering myself to it with one hand and letting the rest of my body fall away, on the cusp of collapse. One coldly sunny day, a beautiful black-haired girl joined my solitary orbit in silence, which she finally broke to compliment my Velcro Mulan sneakers. This, of course, was Em. The next Saturday, my mom and I stood outside her front door. Em came running down the stairs, and we went down to the basement while our mom sat at the kitchen counter chatting in those plasticky voices. After we made brownies in her easy bake oven, she told me her Korean name meant precious pearl. I was so envious I asked my grandmother what my name meant, pressing her until she said beautiful, pure, perfect. With the moon's absence, the nights became deeper and the stars multiplied like shining maggots, shivering and wet, a whole net of them strung across the sky. They looked so near, almost ready to drizzle down, wobbling like droplets barely clinging to the rim of an umbrella. Then safe night driving won out over stargazing as a public concern, and the government passed new laws mandating streetlights at intervals commensurate with population density. After that, the night skies were lighter and emptier than ever. My grandmother joked that she wouldn't have to give us money on Lunar New Year anymore. None of the children's hanboks she'd brought years ago from Korea fit us anyway, and it felt weird to do the formal bow in regular clothes, as if we were performing out of costume. She said Koreans used to believe there were fire dogs that chased the sun and moon, and maybe one finally got the moon, which didn't seem less reasonable than any of the other hypotheses. In the end, the festivities proceeded essentially as usual, the lunar part in name only, an empty signifier. The moon so easily became a thing of myth, I couldn't help wondering if that was all it had ever been. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amy. Our next reader is a queer mixed-race, non-binary poet from the Bay Area. They are pursuing a BA from Stanford in comparative literature with a focus on marginalized literatures and poetics of America. They are a 2019 Lambda Literary Scholarship recipient and fellow in poetry and a 2020 VONA alumni. Please join me in welcoming Sid Vesley.
Hi. The poem I have in the book is an old poem, so I'll read that one. It was actually misprinted in the book. There were some words that were supposed to be erased out, which is totally fine. But I'll read it that way, so it might be a little different than in the book. Love letters to Toshi. 1. When the light breaks, how does it feel against of your body? When it rains, which do you wear and do you think of when you do? It's been 1 day since you, and the earth hasn't even slowed down. There have been a great many which burned down the mountains, and then a rain which hasn't stopped in many. Oh, Toshi, it has been raining in, too. I have kissed often and collected the rainwater in the back of. There are so many I have to give you in so many words that I can't. I think of, in the way that she held your each, the way I hold in the mornings. There is a softness in that, one that I learned from walking with you. There is in me, one that I'm trying to find the two. If only you had had more, I think you would have liked, too. Keeps me companies on the nights when I can't help but I am not lonely anymore. How do I tell you that I feel so much more alive? 2. Nana, some things hold me better than others, and when you left, I turned to Esther, the earth. She holds me too in her hands late at night. As is light, there is soil, and I feel her in my palms and dig and dig and dig. I wish you could hear the wind's soft whistle. I wish you could know the slight bend of the trees at my touch, the feel of the stones beneath my feet. 3. That a body could hold it all, that a death could overflow. A granddaughter becomes a grandson. I am the same child, the same child. I say you do not reject me from heaven. I say there is no world in which we do not inherit each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Sid. Our final reader for the evening is a Kundiman Fellow, a Lambda Literary Award finalist, and a National Book Foundation 5 Under 35 honoree. She is the author of the New York Times Editor's Choice novel, Bestiary, which was longlisted for the Center for Fiction First Novel Prize and the PEN Faulkner Award. Her short story collection, Resident Aliens, is forthcoming from One World. More of her work can be found at kamingchang.com. Please join me in welcoming Kaming Chang.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm going to read a brief excerpt from a story called Dykes. And for context, the narrator and her love interest are in a flooded city, and the narrator is trapped in an apartment building. Ale once said you could know everything about a person by asking them for their first memory of water. She said hers was of seeing a giant koi fish as big as a bus. She saw it rip out of the water in Taiwan, its yellow scales each as big as the sun. The koi ate whole cows and houses and sometimes whales. One day it washed up on the beach, belly up with its whiskers long as telephone wires, and someone had to come and pierce its belly with a spear to keep it from exploding in the heat. But the koi exploded anyway, its transparent guts raining down on the town and frying brown on aluminum roofs. It was one big barbecue, Ale said, and for months people chiseled flesh off the koi corpse and ate it down to its bones, which were so big that they were repainted into dinosaur fossils and sent to a scam museum that displayed them. My first memory of water wasn't a body. It was rain, but not rain like this. The rain I remembered was weak as our shower head and intermittent, and it had been caused by my mother, who was alive in this memory and dead in all the others. She told me that the purpose of rain was to manufacture rainbows, and the purpose of a rainbow was to act as a bridge between the living and the dead. After she died, I ran outside every time it rained, which wasn't often in our drought state, and waited for my mother to walk across the rib of a rainbow and say my name. I hadn't seen any rainbows yet, but I still checked the sky daily. I still mistook the glow of oil in the flood river for a rainbow, the breach of my mother's feet as the sky birthed her backward, returning her to me. I wanted to ask Ale what this said about me. I wanted to know if she missed me. Next door, Mrs. Tai ate her cat. She'd spent 3 days knocking on every door on our floor, asking if we had any food to spare, but none of us answered. My father kept cans of Spam under his bed in anticipation of sudden apocalypses, and at some point in the week, we began to eat it directly out of the can, without the patty of cold rice, without using any utensils. We clawed the cold meat with our hands and nearly swallowed our fingers. Since the water shut off, we drank directly from the floodwaters, even though it gave us diarrhea for days at a time, and the carpet was stained with it, a mosaic of our sickness. My father lit candles in the bedroom, but mostly we lived in the dark, waking in the day with bruises and cuts we accrued in the dark without bothering to check if we bled. It was today when we heard Mrs. Tai strangling her cat with the cord of her hairdryer. The cat cried like a newborn, and for a second we thought Mrs. Tai had given birth. It was a wail with the lifespan of a wind, a cry that harmonized with the rain. And when it was over, the cat was dead, and Mrs. Tai was planning sweet and sour ribs. We heard her crying as she cooked the cat on a sheet of tinfoil over a fire of magazines and toilet paper rolls. The cat had been her late husband's, a man who'd been an officer in the Chinese Navy and who always maintained his hands and fists behind his back, as if he were holding a weapon he didn't know how to put down. His pockets sagged with sweat and strawberry candies he gave out to anyone younger than him, which was everyone. When he died, we saw Mrs. Tai's cat prancing down the hallway wearing his clothing, a sock or his watch or his old Chinese naval hat. Mrs. Tai pretended the cat had stolen them, but we knew she was dressing it. She sometimes shaved the cat's head bald, symmetrical to her husband's. We never heard from Mrs. Tai again after she ate her cat, not even when we began to evacuate, not even the night we saw the goat in the water and banged on her door, asking if she had a rope to loan us. The goat floated by our window in the morning, its white head bobbing on the water, its lips bloody and bleeding. There was a sphere of flesh missing from its hind leg, a bite wound the size of an apple. I suspected it was the sharks. No one was sure where the sharks came from, only that they fattened on eating corpses in the water. There were fish of every color that had escaped from hotel aquariums, some of them silver or striped, others marbled like meat, all of them caricaturing the sea. Thank you.
Thank you so much. As we have a little bit of time, because we're running out ahead of schedule, I felt like it would be important for us to hold a moment of silence in the midst of the celebration for the Asian women we've lost in the past month, in the past week, and for all the other folks who have also been murdered. And feel free to turn video off if necessary. I would like to lead that, and then we will go into some questions for the authors. Thank you so much to everyone for reading today as well. So in honor of the Asian women we lost this month and this past week, our 1 minute, a moment of silence. Thank you. And thank you for holding space for that. So if you have any questions, pop them into the chat. If you have any shout outs, pop them into the chat.
Shimona, I want to start by asking a question to all of our readers today. And in my way, I want to tell a really short story, which is, I put in the chat that this is one of the larger issues that I've published at Sinister Wisdom. It's also the issue with the most languages in it, and the most number of contributors outside of the United States. And one of the things I regularly get questions about, how does Sinister Wisdom come to people in the mail? What does the outside packaging say? Can you see through the package? In this particular issue, a couple of the contributors said that they couldn't receive it because they were living with parents or in other environments where they couldn't be out and they didn't want people to see the issue. But we made other arrangements, like to get it to different people who could hand give it to them. So in most circumstances, it worked out really well and lovely. But I want to ask the folks that read, what for you are the stakes in being a lesbian, in being queer, in being out in your life, and what does that mean? What does it mean to be in this issue of Sinister Wisdom? And how are you going about navigating all of those particular challenges? To anyone who wants to kind of speak to this issue in any kind of way.
I have a little anecdote to share. So when I came out, or when I was outed in high school, my family kicked me out for a while. But like last week when I received this copy, I was able to read it with my mother. So the transition of like 15 years of what happened between us. So sometimes it does get better with family, sometimes it doesn't. And I guess I feel fortunate that I'm able to share it with my family.
Thank you so much, Jax. Somebody else want to chime in?
I have a question. I'm not sure if I can be heard.
Yep, go ahead.
I wondered, you said you had difficulty reaching out, and this is the editor of the issue, Vi, had difficulty getting submissions, and then suddenly you had way too many, and I wondered what happened that caused you to have so many that you couldn't keep interviewing people.
I think there was I think on Twitter, I think it was posted on Twitter. And I think on Twitter, for some reason, it stuck. The callings start to sticks, you know. And I think sometime also like it was also like the first few weeks, the earlier weeks of its submission. I think it was I think enlarged because I think it was partly projecting of the fear that I'm the only Asian lesbian out there. So I think, you know, like, oh, okay, I think the universe is just like giving me what is available and not what is actually out there. And so I was, I think that helped a lot. I think like when I started interviewing people, I released that energy of attachment that it has to have a certain amount of submission. And when I released that and I became detached, I think it just, you know, like, I think it's just like one of the laws that governs how things build momentum and how things accumulate is just through the release of attachment. I don't know whoever out there that did made the Twitter calling sticks. I'm really grateful for whoever they are. In the same way that I'm very grateful for Amy Haijun for like putting so much work in the organizing, editing. I mean, you know, like I did the reading, but I think Amy did a lot of the behind the scene work that is invisible to your eyes. I feel like if anything else, she's it's also the editor, but from like a graphic design standpoint. She said the design everything. She organized so that all the interviews are juxtaposed between poems and stories. She did the copy editing. So it was just like she was like putting 10 different hats in order to get this issue out. With the help with Julie, like they both combined forces to bring this beautiful vessel to you. I feel like I did contribute, but I think it's like anything that it's great happening. If anything that's beautifully or is born is a result of like a community coming together and hoping nourish something already beautiful into the world. So I can't really say like my contribution is, it's like just maybe 1% of what it is that it's embodied, and the rest belongs to the community and to Amy and Julie and Sinister Wisdom, and in many ways also to readers like you, like I like I know like I know like from an Asian community standpoint, the best, some of the great things that I learned about my own culture come from Western supports, like people that are not Asian who have advocate for what I want, Sometimes it's not like Asian advocating for Asians, I just feel like there are larger forces outside my own that help nourish this into being. So combinations of many things coming together at the right time, at the right space, with the right audience, and with the right readers and writers and contributors that lead to this vessel.
Thank you so much, Vicky. I will lead us in wrapping up tonight. Thank you all for joining us this evening. Remember, the video will be made available at the Sinister Wisdom website tomorrow or Thursday. The link will be in the chat. And I invite everyone to join us next week for our conversation with Jennifer Abbott. More Sinister Wisdom events will be available at http://www.sinisterwisdom.org/events. For our final song, we have The L Word by songwriter Carol Kramer, performed by Your Girlfriend and produced by Esther Records. As you listen to this music, stand up and dance, and we will highlight videos. When the music ends, I will end the Zoom call, or rather, Julie will end the Zoom call. Thank you all for joining us, and now let the dancing begin.
Word. It's the only chance you got to reclaim our name and not live in shame to try to improve our lives. Come on, say the word. It's the only chance you got to stop the lying and denying, and come on and give it a shot. And everybody say lesbian. Everybody say lesbian. 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 Word. Did your stomach take a turn? Did you look around to see if the sound is loud enough to make the ears burn? Did you say it in a whisper, or did you just say gay? Did your face turn red? Did you decide instead to save it for another day? Then did you say lesbian? Lesbian. Lesbian. There are latest version of Plague of Ice. All it takes is a little practice. But come on and take my advice and everybody say lesbian.
Lesbian.
Lesbian. Les.
Because if you can't say it, it's hard to be it. If you can't be it, they can't see it. If they can't see it, they'll deny it. If we all deny it, we're in the closet for life. For life. Or death.
Increased every year since the start of the AIDS crisis. Our jobs, we are denied places to live. We are here today to say enough is enough. We are ready to live as full and equal members of society, and we are ready to fight for our freedom.
So give me an L. Give me an E. Give me an S. Give me a B. Give me an I. Everybody say lesbian. Everybody say lesbian. Come on, say lesbian. Everybody say
This is a significant time in our community and our visibility as a movement. We must be strong and proud and out.
Next time you say the L word, think of the woman next to you, or your teammate on the soccer field, or the wise woman helping you through. And think of your high school basketball coach, or your last music festival crush, or your ultimate erotic fantasy. It's okay to blush. But find a mirror, look yourself in the eye, and with warm regard, say the L word, say lesbian. Everybody say lesbian. Come on, say lesbian. Everybody say lesbian. Everybody say lesbian. Everybody say lesbian. Come on, say lesbian. Everybody say lesbian.
To your lover.
Thank you all. Hope to see you next week.